Welcome to the Health and Wealth Podcast. This is a show dedicated to the pursuit of health and wealth without losing your health to attain that wealth. With this podcast, we're going to share stories and best practices of successful business owners who either sell health or have health as part of their business plan. You're going to get great marketing and strategic advice from proven, successful experts. We will also be sharing stories from successful entrepreneurs who lost their health on the road to wealth, what they learned, and how they do things differently now, both in business and in life. Let's welcome your host, businesswoman, personal trainer, and podcast queen, JJ Flazanes.
Welcome, everyone, to today's show. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host and producer. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about the spiritual tools for difficult times, and I'm excited to share today's episode with you. It's with Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith. He is the founder of Agape International Spiritual Center. He was also on The Secret, and I'll tell you more about him in a minute. But it is definitely one of my best manifestations. Reverend Michael has endorsed 2 of my 3 books, and this is the first time we're having a one-on-one conversation. So I'm excited to bring you today's show. I think it's going to hit a lot of points, especially with what's going on right now. We've got some real tools for real time. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and we'll share it with others who may need to hear this message. Before I tell you about Reverend Michael, just 2 small announcements. I am hosting a free webinar on building your business with the law of attraction. Again, that's building your business with the law of attraction on Wednesday, October 28th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And you can register for that at jjflazanes.com/LOABIZ. Again, LOA means law of attraction, BIZ for biz, LOABIZ. There are also 2 weeks left to get the early bird discount for the Inner Circle Mastermind 2021. And for those of you that are on the fence, again, that doesn't cost anything to apply. You can come on over to jjsinnercirclemastermind.com, watch all the videos, read everything, see what's offered, see if it resonates with you. And remember last week's show with Melanie about stretching yourself, and ask yourself, especially this year, what did this year teach you about how you want to live moving forward? Is what's been going on feeling good? Do you feel trapped? Do you feel powerless? Would you like to feel empowered and powerful and know you have choice and flexibility and creativity? If this speaks to you, again, it's a pretty significant savings for the early bird, and it won't be offered past November 1st for anyone. So if you're at all on the fence, again, please go to jjsinnercirclemastermind.com, fill out an application, let's get on a quick call, and then we'll know. At least you won't miss an opportunity to save some money if in a couple months from now you decide it's time to up-level your business, your life, and your health. And both of the links I just mentioned are in the show notes. Michael Bernard Beckwith is the founder and spiritual director of the Agape International Spiritual Center in Los Angeles, author of the award-winning books, Life Visioning, A Transformative Process for Activating Your Unique Gifts and Highest Potential, Spiritual Liberation, and Transcendence. Beckwith has appeared on Super Soul Sunday, The Oprah Show, Dr. Oz, Larry King Live, Tavis Smiley, and in his own PBS special, The Answer Is You. A sought-after speaker and meditation teacher, Michael has been the recipient of numerous humanitarian awards and is the inaugural member of Oprah's Super Soul 100. Join Michael's Wednesdays at 1 p.m. for his Instagram Live conversations, Lifting the Veil. For more information on Michael and Agape, you can visit michaelbeckwith.com and agapelive.com. All the links will be in the show notes. Welcome, everyone, to today's show. I know, an interesting new beginning. Well, it's a very special show because it's a manifestation of something I've been working on for quite a long time. I have with us today Michael Bernard Beckwith, founder of Agape International Spiritual Center, otherwise known as Reverend Michael, or the Rev. And I've been working on this for a while. He has definitely supported a few of my books in the past because they are in alignment with Agape's teachings. But this is the first time we're coming together one-on-one, and I'm so excited to bring him to you today. If you're watching this on YouTube, come on over to the podcast, download it and take it with you. Hear a lot more about Reverend Michael in the beginning as I talk about his bio and all of his books and everything he's been doing and his programs. If you're listening to this on the podcast, come over and watch us on YouTube so you can get a sense of how much fun we're going to have today. He's feeling a little spunky. So am I. It's a great time to really push the limit on having fun during some crazy times. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome to the show, Michael.
Hey, it is my joy for us to meet together in person. I do remember endorsing your books.
Thank you. Well, I love that it's one of my greatest accomplishments when I did it was to put your name as someone who endorsed the work I was doing in the world, because it's in alignment with the work that you're doing in the world. And I love that they would get to explore and share with others how those two paths are going to illuminate a new path for other people.
Absolutely.
So first, let's talk about, for those of you that don't know Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith, he has started the Agape International Spiritual Center. And one of the things that I've wanted all of you, for those of you that follow me on Instagram or Facebook, to really get involved in, especially when we sort of got shut down and locked into our homes and we weren't able to leave. I've been attending Agape live in person since 2007, and I've done it also from the comfort of my home. And there's no reason why everyone in my community couldn't do the same. So if you're someone who's looking for a spiritual community, one that's active, you're looking for a congregation, a church, another leader, someone to inspire you that in ways that maybe I can't, I would really recommend everyone go to agapelive.com and check out what's going on. Come to the Sunday services, participate, sing, dance. You get to be featured. It's an awesome time, and know that I'm there with you, and we can even schedule watch parties if you want. So Reverend Michael, why don't you start telling us a little bit about Agape in general? For those that don't know about it, it's a church, but not a church. How would you describe to someone who's never heard of Agape before what it is?
It's Agape International Spiritual Center, which means everyone is there. You have people from all religious backgrounds. It's one of the most inclusive and diverse spiritual communities in the United States and probably in the world. You have obviously people from different nationalities from all around the world. You have people who had their genesis in Buddhism and Christianity, in Islam, in Zoroastrianism, atheists. So when we come together and we're celebrating that spark of divinity that lies within us all. I began Agape in 1986, so we're in our 34th year of being in this manifest form, and we reach millions of people around the world that live stream us on my Facebook page and on agapelive.com and on YouTube, and 3 Sunday services. We have afternoon meditations. We have morning prayer times. We have community gatherings on Friday night. We have crisis support where people call in and can be counseled by my spiritual therapist, prayer ministry. We do a lot of sacred service in the community. So it's a service-oriented community that's based in the ageless wisdom teachings of all religions. So this is why it's called a trans-denominational community, because it cuts across all denominations to that which is real about them all. And again, it's been my joy to be at the helm of this community for going on 34 years. And it feels like I'm just getting started. It doesn't feel any kind of cumbersome, laborious, stagnant. Ooh, I've been doing this a long time. It doesn't feel like that. It feels very bright, very new, very energetic. And so you have people that have been here the whole 34 years, 20 years, 10 years, and then you have people that are coming in new, fresh every single day. And it's a powerful community, I must say.
13 years for me. And so I'm not quite at 34. But I think one of the reasons why it feels the way it does for you is because you keep expanding and you keep transforming and uplifting. And so it's not for those of you that have never attended an Agape service. And again, I implore you, please click the link below in the show notes and come to a Sunday service, come live. Or you can go back and watch in the archives, because they all archive everything and you can watch it at any time, if you can't make it live, to be with the community online out when it's in progress, which is really fun, by the way. But one of the things that I know that has, your growth has inspired other people's growth. And it's because I've watched it. You've changed in the 13 years that I've been going, right? I remember you're more focused now. I feel like, not that you weren't focused before, I feel like you're focused in a different way. I feel like there's been, when we manifest contrast of change in life, like now, like you've been called to another level, would you agree, to sort of rise above into a even bigger leadership position of being able to speak to the world in ways I can't and other people can't, about what's really happening right now in the world? Like, what's the spiritual solution here? What's the spiritual message that we're being asked to embody and take a hint to get on the right train, going in the right direction for that which we really want? Like, what would be your advice right now about that growth path and where you are in delivering this new message?
Mm-hmm. Well, you're absolutely correct. I consider myself a lifelong learner, so I'm always on the edge of discovering the next iteration of Michael. There's always more of Michael to come forward. There's always, and that's true for everyone. There aren't any special people. God didn't create special people. The universe didn't birth special people that are more endowed than other people. The only thing that separates people are their habits, their mental habits, their physical habits. And so I consider myself a lifelong learner. I'm always in my spiritual practice on a daily basis to discover more and more and more about the infinite. So therefore, there's an expansion. Who I was 5 years ago, who I was 10 years ago, 15, etc. I'm a better version of that individual. The seed of who I am was in that individual. It is now blossoming. And so I know that 3, 4, 5 years from now, I'll look back at this guy and say, oh, wow, I've really grown from who he was. And so you're absolutely correct. The times in which we are living right now are unprecedented on so many levels. We have environmental concerns. We have the rainforests disappearing at millions of miles a minute. We have in certain countries, there's genocide. We have obviously the oceans being polluted. We have fires in parts of the United States. We have the whole racial injustice issue rising up that was hidden from many for many years. There's so much happening at one time that this is a time in which, as I've described it, it's a time in which things are fluxed up. We're in a great state of flux. And whenever you're in a great state of flux and the old normal no longer exists, it's a rare opportunity to actually begin to design where you want to go. When things are stagnant or business as usual is ruling everything, it's often difficult to change on a mass scale. But right now, there's nothing solid. And of course, in reality, there's nothing solid anyway. Everything is always in a state of movement. But right now, you can really see it. So this is the opportunity for all of us to use even our quarantine time, the individuals who we've been asked to forego our travel, to stay inside as much as we possibly can. These are times to ask ourselves certain questions. Who do I want to be when I'm able to travel again? Not, I'll be glad when this is over. I'm tired of this. But who do I want to be? Now, here's the teaching. The universal presence, by whatever name you choose to call it, and its laws answer any question that you ask. So if you ask, who do I want to become, or what am I becoming, or what is trying to emerge during this time of seeming chaos, we'll all begin to get insights into what's within us already that's seeking to emerge. And if we pay attention to that and begin to ruminate upon that and contemplate upon that and meditate upon that, we will become great versions of ourselves, which will be the vibrational answer to the issues that are going on in the planet. What does that mean? Everybody has a calling to be about something. Everybody's got gifts, talents, capacities. Everybody can't do everything, but everybody can do something. And when you begin to answer, the question begins to be answered as to what you are becoming, you will find your place in the world to do what you're called to do, but not as a reaction to the things going on in the world. It will be as a response from what's within you trying to come forward. So we're being asked to be the vibrational essence of a world that's trying to be born even before it physically manifests. That's where solution is. It's in the invisible. It's not seen by the sensorium. It's only caught in our awareness. So just as the beginning of answering your question, we have to live with empowering questions. We have to deeply listen. That's called reverential alertness. And then that will provide some type of growth and action on our part. And then we'll be in the world, but we'll be of the answer. You see? In the world.
We'll be in the world, but of the answer.
Yes, vibrationally.
Right. Now, that was something for everyone to take a breath on.
Yeah.
We'll be in the world, but of the answer.
Yes.
So I want to talk about this time and space a little bit deeper and more specifically in terms of, and I don't need to get in the weeds. It's just understanding that we're not wanting to come from a place of reaction. Yet there's so much reaction and there's so much injustice that a lot of us are seeing that, I've said to another physician that I had on the show, I said, COVID didn't cause fear. It just uncovered it.
Absolutely.
It's been there. And one of the blessings, I think, of what's going on is this new awareness, this new creation of awareness and levels of consciousness that we've wanted, haven't had before, because now this contrast is forcing us to focus in a way that's new. Absolutely. And that we have to really go a little deeper to ask, how do I feel about all this? And do I actually believe what's going on is really what's going on? And where am I in this? And what does this mean for me? And what's coming for me? And how do I grow in this and be proactive and to be flexible and to be resilient and to pioneer and to be creative? I've had to, obviously, I've been a personal trainer for 20 years, but I've been online with coaching and exercising for people since 2009. In a way, I was ahead of the curve, but this space has been such a blessing for many reasons in order to, again, hone in on and to bridge, while we complain about technology taking things away from us many times, my parents are finding out how to use Zoom. I mean, it's been amazing. Like, they actually enjoyed getting on their iPad and having a conversation and said, we should do this more often. And here I'm thinking, what have I been asking you for the last 15 years? Right. So there are so many blessings, but I want to address your response to, I remember coming to, it was a Sunday morning and it was probably when the riots started. And I remember your very poignant and compassionate and more than intelligent. It was deeply inspired and super connected to source about the conversation about racism. And I, at that time, couldn't get John fast enough. So I had to reach out to someone else. Like I need somebody else's perspective who can say, I've lived this more than me, to have that sort of greater empowering conversation. So let's speak to racism for a second and things that you've been telling people, things you've been preaching about on Sundays, the things I've seen other interviews of you talk about.
Yeah, well, obviously, first of all, racism is a disease, it's an illness. And it's even classified psychologically as a disease where an individual is operating from racial superiority or thinking that some other being is less than. That's a level of narcissism, and it's a level of disease that those who have the disease don't even know they have it. And oftentimes their family members and the young people that they raise catch it. But when we look at the arc of racism from 1619, when the first Africans were brought over to America to be turned into slaves, there had to be a rationalization for this, because the good Christian people at first weren't going for enslaving people like this. And so they created a whole narrative that the people coming from Africa were less than human. They weren't really fully human. They were like a cow or a horse. They could be used to do, the manual labor. So that particular image and that particular narrative then continued even when slavery was eradicated. There became sharecropping, there became public lynching, there became Jim Crow segregation, and there became over-incarceration, Black people targeted to be arrested, to put in jail. There became police brutality. All of these things that have occurred in our country, laws were changed, but the underlying narrative was never dealt with. So even though it's against the law to have a slave, it's against the law to keep people from buying homes in particular areas, or to keep them out of certain schools, these laws were changed, the narrative was never changed. And the narrative was never changed because America never came to fully embrace that particular original sin that was on the nation, which was slavery. The slaves actually built the wealth of the nation with over 300 years of free labor, actually built the wealth of America. So when you look at, for instance, South Africa after apartheid was over, they dealt with it. They had forgiveness tribunals. They had ways to go in and actually allow for the nation to come to grips with what the nation had been doing to the Africans all of these years. People had an opportunity to forgive. People had an opportunity to make amends. People had all kinds of opportunities to not just sweep this under the rug. In Germany, you know, they had ways of dealing with the fact that not only did the Holocaust happen, but that the Jewish people's homes were taken away from them, their property was taken away from them, and the country dealt with it. And even they still have monuments up to that particular time in human history. So it was actually dealt with it to a degree so that it could never happen again. In America, it's never been dealt with. So this particular time in human history, with the killing of George Floyd, and then the other murders that happened pre and post that, provided a kind of powder keg for all of this energy that had been built up for years to finally come to the surface, and that other people began to actually witness and see and pay attention to how people of color had been living for a long period of time. Before it was kind of like a myth. Oh, it's not really that bad. You know, no, that doesn't really happen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Certain people who were ready to grow began to investigate, read certain materials, read certain books, and began to see, wow, Beckwith, Michael, have you experienced this? Of course I've experienced this. You know, ever since I was a little kid to present moment, I've experienced racism. I am not a victim. I may have been victimized by things, but I don't carry the vibration of victimhood. So I'm not walking around, you know, being a victim to anything. But yes, I've experienced everything that everybody's talking about, but I operate at a different level, you see. So this is a great time in human history where we have to actually confront that the Black people are over incarcerated, and even though there's 13 to 16% of the population, they're like 70-80% part of the jail system, you know. And we can go on and on and on with all manner of statistics. But this particular time in human history, we get to see something that won't go back under the rug anymore. And we can confront it. You know, there's been a lot of dialogues, a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of meetings where people coming together, Black, white, straight, gay, Mexican, Latinx, you know, actually having difficult conversations about racism, about how people unconsciously participate in it, white privilege, things that many people were oblivious to. Not that people were bad people, just oblivious, just had no idea. You know, by the time a young Black boy is 7 years old, they already walk into a room knowing that they're looked upon as the other. And they have what is called like racist antibodies within their being. They already know they're not looked upon like the same person that walks in. If a 10-year-old white guy walks into a room, he's looked at differently than a 10-year-old Black guy walking in a room. People are learning these psychological constructs that people have been living under. And once you learn something, you can't unsee it. And now we can have the necessary dialogue and then actions to begin to dissolve what is called systemic racism. Now, let me just say this. I was very heartened. I was on a Zoom town hall meeting in Los Angeles recently that was put together by Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas. And we were talking about all these issues. And then we had to break off into smaller rooms and have dialogue and then come back to the bigger room. So in my room, I was with the police chief of Los Angeles, Michael Moore, and Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas, a wonderful professor. And so I was talking about systemic racism, some of my experiences. And then the individuals I was moderating says, well, Beckwith, Dr. Beckwith, before you go on any further, let's see if there's an agreement that systemic racism even exists. So the first person to speak was Michael Moore, the police chief of Los Angeles. And he eloquently talked about the fact that systemic racism exists. He talked about the history of it coming from England, being placed in all systems in order to oppress people, how it's infiltrated the police department. This was the police chief talking. And he went on to talk about the fact that what he's been doing is trying to move the police department from policing to protecting and serving. And that to protect and serve everyone, not just a small part of the population. And he said his pushback was the middle management of sergeants who had been there for years, but they're now kind of retiring. And so he's able to now have a bigger impact on the police department. So it goes more towards protecting and serving the entire population rather than policing a part of the population and protecting and serving the other part of the population. But it gave me great hope that this police chief knew all about systemic racism, knew its genesis, knew how it operated, and what he was doing to dismantle it. It's like I was pleasantly surprised. And that was different from the sheriff department or the Beverly Hills Police Department. They're a little bit not as evolved as the Los Angeles Police Department. But it heartened me to have this beautiful conversation with this man and what he was seeking to do. So I know I gave a long answer to your question, but
no, it's good. I want to now connect the worlds though, because so here's the thing. So as I know you teach it in Agape anyway, we have different levels of that consciousness and reality that's happening all the time. I want to bridge the gap for the people that are, because sometimes circumstances can cause people to take a victim position. Like you said, you understand that it's there, whether you decide to click into it, whether you decide to operate from that, whether you decide to attract more of that and live in a space of a lower frequency. That for some people, they don't realize is a choice because they might be talking about the whatever. And again, this could be COVID. This could be, I mean, whatever. It could be the election. It could be politics in terms of deciding that my circumstances dictate my choices. My circumstances dictate my frequency. My circumstances dictate my choices. And I'm in reaction versus, as you talked about at the very beginning of today, that we want to be a part of that solution energetically, no matter what's coming at us, that we're living from that place of whatever that greater vision is, that
right.
higher vision, that God source vision of what is really real energetically, not just what we think is in front of us real.
Right. Yeah. I think there's a question in there.
So the question was connect them for me in terms of, I want to, here's what's going on. Here's what the problem is now and there's a choice on every person to decide whether to make that a part of their story and how they act and how they react, or how does someone lift out of that, still having it be true and real for them, but come from a different place spiritually.
Yeah, choice is a function of expanded awareness. Without expanded awareness, you're mainly in reaction. Now, we never blame the victim for things that have happened to them. But, I generally have two conversations sometimes. To the minority population, I'm just using that terminology, I would say, you have to raise yourself out of victimhood. We're not denying that you've been victimized, not denying that. But you have to begin to no longer identify yourself as a victim and begin to discover that place within you that hasn't been hurt and begin to operate from that place to help build the kind and just global society. To those who are not in that particular class, I say your role is to have compassion. So to those who are victimized, you're growing out of victimhood. For those who haven't been victimized, you have to have a level of compassion, meaning you begin to imagine what it feels like to have lived under the iron feet of oppression or racism for X amount of years. What would that feel like? If you have that kind of compassion, that kind of empathy, then you'll operate differently in the world. And for those who have been victimized, I invite them to take off the victim badge. Not denying bad stuff has happened. I could go down many experiences that I've had in America, where I've been victimized, but I refuse to see myself as a victim. You see, I see myself as an emanation of divine source first, emanation of the presence of God, love, intelligence, beauty flows through me. And from that dynamic, I get to make a choice as to who I am in the world and how I'm going to operate and what I am going to do to assist in the dismantling of negativity and the building of the beloved community, not as a victim, but as an individual that's been empowered by the Spirit of God, you see. And so so sometimes I have conversations depending on who I'm talking to, and of course, Agape is one of the most diverse, inclusive communities. So I'm always having to speak at the meta level and then come down and speak to individuals that may be a person of color that have gone through this, or maybe a person that's not been challenged by that, but maybe they're oblivious. They don't even know what white privilege is. So I have to educate that level. But the idea is choice is a function of expanded awareness. So always at the rock bottom of the teaching is we all must expand our awareness through spiritual practice. So we're being led by insight and revelation and not by reaction to circumstances or continuing to replay what has happened to us energetically so that that becomes a part of our future. We begin to forgive and dissolve that so that we're fresh and new moment by moment by moment. Now, of course, it's easier said than done, which is why it's called a practice.
And what would be some of those practices you recommend and or do to continue to stay in that frequency, in that space, in that higher consciousness when, bad stuff's happening?
Right. Well, what we talked about earlier was you have to live in an empowering question. You have to actually live in that. You have to actually ask, what is it within me that's trying to emerge right now? You have to have that question. And then, that's a part of your spiritual practice. You must begin to articulate a vision for your life. You have to go into the life visioning process or begin to open yourself up to a vision so that your vision is pulling you. It gets you up in the morning. And that vision is on two levels. It's the macro level. What does the world look like if the world was working magnificently for everyone? You have to be able to articulate that vision. And then you have to ask your life, what does your life look like if in fact you are in alignment with your higher self? And so you have to, once you're able to articulate that vision, there's a feeling tone that comes with it. It wakes you up in the morning, it puts a smile on your face, it gives you energy, and you begin to live in that frequency before any physical manifestation of that even shows up. That's called faith, the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. It's a living substance of what you're working on, and it's the evidence of what can't be seen. You're living in the realm of the invisible, but it's very real to you. Every visionary, the vision is more real than the chair they're sitting on. And so that has to be a part of your practice. You have to have a part of your practice that's very mindful. That is some type of meditative practice where you are extracting your attention from the world. And let me just say this for a moment. There's a difference between the world and the planet. Many people use those words synonymously, but they're not the same thing. The planet is Mother Earth. Oceans and rivers and mountain ranges and rainforests, etc. It's a living entity. The world is a collection of thoughts and ideas and opinions and positionalities and points of view that shape your world view. So two people can be standing on the same spot on the planet, but be in different worlds, you see.
So we can be standing, right next to each other, having a whole conversation. Today I was on a rollerblade, part of our meditation practice, and my partner and I, Doug, who attends Agape as well. The first time he came, he thought, I'm home. He grew up Jewish. He says emphasis on the ish. And when he found Agape, he thought, okay, this is my people. I didn't know what I was looking for, but these are my people and this is what I need. So it's always, we actually gather when we were in session, live session, we would have once a month with groups of friends that we would invite to come to Agape and then go to brunch afterwards. So, we had a whole thing. I have all the pictures. I can show you every week we were there for like months of all of our friends. But one of the practices that we do on Mondays and Wednesdays is we take time and we want to get back to the no technology mornings, which means I have to stop scheduling Instagram lives on Wednesday morning. And but we get up and we leisurely sort of have our day and our coffee, and then we go to the beach and we rollerblade or walk and meditate and read a book and write a letter to the universe, and we read it to each other and we meditate before we do all that. And today, just a case in point of being in your own world that people don't realize, but it's as simple as I was rollerblading and I had like a little energy that wasn't, I don't know, like had some energy. Let's just say I didn't need to go into the why or the what or how this come. I just knew it was there. And I put my headphones on and I had my sunglasses on, even though it wasn't that sunny. And I was, rollerblading. And then all of a sudden a song came on that reminded me of a very significant event of my life. And I started to cry. And I cried pretty hard as I was rollerblading down, right? Because I knew it needed to come out. I knew that this energy needed to move. And I'm not a big repressor help people to try not to repress and find where they can empower themselves to release and make peace with and love and forgive and let go of stuff that they're holding on to. So I just let it go. But the funny thing is while I'm rollerblading, completely aware I'm ugly crying and that people are possibly looking at me wondering what's going on with me. I'm oblivious. I mean, I'm aware of it, but I don't care because I'm in my bubble. I'm in my bubble of this is my world. And so many times we have this assumption in life that because I've experienced it and I'm hurt and I have pain, that you know what's going on with me because you are looking at the same thing I am. And how can you not experience the same thing I'm experiencing? And we disregard the uniqueness of how we all interpret things or show up on the planet or what levels that we're vibrating at, that two people standing at the same exact place, looking at the same exact thing have two different experiences. And so I would invite everyone to remember that when you're out in the world and when you're with yourself and when you're shaming people for what they're not doing or doing during this time that aren't in alignment with what you think you should be doing, because we're literally all living in our own worlds. You just can't see it, but it's there. It's this imaginary bubble that you live in. And I want to take today's conversation to the place where how do we keep empowering? And I love that empowering question, because anytime something bad happens to me, I teach law of attraction. Yes. Well, the first thing I always say is, how did I manifest this? Not how was I bad or what was I wrong or what did I do wrong or why am I a bad person? How did I manifest this? Very simply, what was alive in me that attracted something like this, or a belief system that I don't even know it's there to invite this situation. And again, it's a very observer-like question, but it is a very empowering question. And I love that, because if that, like you asked how I would see the world would be people taking full responsibility for their emotions, full responsibility for the reactions, full responsibility for their thoughts and how they came to be, and to get real curious about that. So having the empowering question, meditation, I want to invite you to talk about your new meditation retreat that's coming up. Okay. And then other tools, obviously Agape, everybody going to the site, looking at the archives, participating in the Sunday services, donating, being a part of the community. Besides all of that, and the meditation, the things that Agape and that you have to offer people, your life visioning book, the CDs, like tell us about all the tools that we could get from you to help us live these things we've been talking about.
Right. Okay. We're just throwing me into the briar patch here.
well, okay. Just whatever comes to you.
Yeah. Obviously, the community is an empowering community that teaches leadership, not followership. So as I'm speaking, I'm not inviting people to follow me. I'm inviting people to come into their own spiritual leadership through these practices, so that they're having their own insights and their own revelations into that which is real, not that which is temporary. So, there's a book that I wrote that stands the test of time called Spiritual Liberation, that really gives you a foundational piece of the spiritual principles. And every chapter has practices called embodiments that you actually practice when you finish that chapter. So you're not just reading a book and committing it to memory. You're actually activating what was in the book so that you begin to live it. So one of our and this book is also used in college campuses and in theology schools as well. But spiritual liberation is a very powerful tool. It's on audio, and it's also in hardback as well. And then you mentioned earlier the life visioning process, the life visioning book. Again, it's a classic. It really takes people step by step into the different stages of spiritual growth, development, and unfoldment, and then gives the visioning process onto how to do it. Going into a field of love, asking the empowering question, asking what is my growing edge that I may manifest this particular vision? What do I need to let go of? What do I already have? I mean, there's a set of questions that if you contemplate these questions, you'll discover the answers are within you for real. That statement has been said for so long, it's become, like a cliche, but cliches become cliches because they're truth. And so the answers really are within every individual. If they will give themselves enough time, have enough patience with themselves, ask the question that's in the vision process, they will begin to intuit or feel or be guided to the next step of their own unfolding. Now, here's the thing that most people forget, is that the problems that we're facing only go away as we evolve. You can't just go in and solve a problem. The caterpillar doesn't solve the problem of famine. The caterpillar evolves to becoming a butterfly. Therefore, it can flit and fly to different locations to get food, you see. So we don't just solve a problem as a human being. We're actually being invited to evolve as a species, you see, to change our worldview from lack and limitation and scarcity and competition and oppression and superiority and inferiority, to actually expand our awareness to a unitive awareness, a cosmology of oneness, that we really are one, not a slight and sweet, pithy statement, we are one, singing a song, but actually doing the spiritual practices so that you actually see it. You can't unsee what you see in spiritual practice. And so people generally get there either through a crisis or through an insight. Those are the ways we grow: crisis or insight, or both, a combination of both. So the world's in big crisis right now. We have environmental crisis. We have genocide crisis. We have sexual trafficking crisis. We have a racial injustice crisis. We have all these crises happening at the same time, and they're not just going to be solved at the same level of consciousness that's creating them. All of those are pushing us to be pulled by a vision at the next stage of our evolution that will not be done by politicians. Politicians are not equipped to handle that. That's not their mindset. It's not going to be done by governments. Governments are in the status quo, business as usual. They're stagnant, they're slow, they're a behemoth. They don't do anything other than invade people's lives. They do some good things, but often they're invading people's privacy and things of that particular nature. It's going to happen by the citizens. It was Buckminster Fuller that said that in order for humanity to comprehensively prosper on spaceship Earth, it's going to depend entirely upon the integrity of the individual, not on the political system and not on the economic system. And so individuals are being asked to wake up, find their place where the old is breaking up and the new is being born. Find your place and go at it. Don't wait for the government. Don't wait for the politicians. Don't wait for external authority figures. The only authority one has is the authority of their most recent insight. Like when you have an aha, that's your authority, not a person out there. That means people have to become empowered. And again, governmental influences around the world, really, and you can see the worst case scenario of that under dictatorships and in China, where you get special credits if you're following what the state wants you to do, and you kids can't go to certain schools if you're not following. That's very draconian, but that's worst case scenarios. But you can't look to governments for that. You have to look to yourself, and as you were doing, you create little communities of people that are going to agape, perhaps, that are doing spiritual practices, that are holding each other accountable to growing and unfolding. And then out of that, you don't know what will be born. A new business might be born. A new way of service might be born. A new way of being creative might be born. But it will be the fabric of the new world trying to be born, rather than trying to just fix the old world. And there are people, that's their dharma, to go in and try to fix that world. But as I was saying at Agape recently, talking about some of the oppression, it's not that the system is broken. The system was made to be the way it is. It was actually made to oppress certain people. So it works for certain people. So some things are just going to have to be dismantled. But while that's happening, we have to build new structures. So your small group of people that would meet on a regular basis and have spiritual practice and share, that was creating a frequency for the new to be born. Now imagine concentric circles around the world where people are actually visioning, actually articulating what the world can look like, walking in that direction. We would create, and I believe we're in the middle of one right now, a renaissance that would change the world. But as long as people are glued to their television and thinking the government's going to do something, business as usual will come back.
Absolutely. I'm going to recommend that if you are still watching television and you listen to my show, I would invite you to maybe decrease that time and start putting your attention someplace else. It's not about what you know, it's about what you do. although education and knowledge is power, and understanding and learning more in the direction that supports where we're going, not like you just said, in fixing where we are, because I don't really do politics either, for the reason that I feel like on the step 3 process of like manifestation, they're just about making up the noise. Here's the stuff we don't like. Let's just move around in the stuff we don't like. Let's talk about the problems. There's always, I mean, there's never not a problem, right? When is there never not a problem in politics or government? There's always a problem. That is the whole point of it, is to focus on the problems. But to be in part of the solution, the vibration of the solution is at a different frequency than the vibration of the problem. So it is the masses that are the people who are sort of detached, in a way, lovingly detached from a place of seeing the solution and living there. That's where that's where we can contribute to, again, waking up the planet, getting us moving in that direction, coming from love, and being at a frequency where none of that actually exists. You know, when I was after college, I lived in New York City for a while. And I remember it was probably 1996. And I don't know what I was, I don't watch the news, really haven't watched the news in years. But I'd heard something like about like Ku Klux Klan or something. And I literally stopped and thought, what year is it? Like, I felt like I was in a movie. Like, I'm sorry, that still happens? Like, what? I just, the disconnect was ridiculous. And it's, so sometimes I feel like that's, if I was to actually be in the world, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what you guys are doing down here, but there's a really great world up here. You want to come up here because it feels good. It's all about love and compassion, helping people, being of service, having a good time, feeling good, being empowered. Like, it just astounds me sometimes when I go into that place where a lot of people live, and think, what are you doing down here? Like, this is not good. And it feels bad for everybody. So that's one of the reasons why, obviously, I wanted to have you come on to talk about all the tools and the spiritual connection between what is going on in the world, the call that we have in front of us to take, if we so choose it, and to recognize our contribution to that on a personal, empowering, energetic level to create momentum.
Right. And your platform you have now is actually an antidote to the daily dose of negative news that people get on a regular basis, because, as you were indicating, they feed us the lowest common denominator of the human experience. And you would think, after listening to the news, that everybody's going to bed hating everybody and wanting to kill people and commit genocide and steal and rob, or whatever the case may be. But that's a small portion of the population. Most people want their kids safe. They want enough food to feed their family, want their families to go to a good school so that they can activate their gifts and talents. That's where the majority of people live on the planet. But we focus our attention on the most insidious, unconscious, ignorant, unevolved people and the things they're doing. And that's what drives the dramas of our movies. You know, somebody's going to steal something, they're going to break in and take this person's money, or, that's what drives the dramas, pretty much. Materialism and greed and consumerism and things of that particular nature. What we're seeking to do is make collaboration and peace and love and the beauty and social artistry sexy. So it becomes like the thing. You know what I mean? It's like we're all social artists. We're all to get insight and then to go forth and give birth to whatever our work of art is. Some people's work of art is to work with children. Some is to be in the healing modality. Some is to be points of inspiration. Some is to be architects of great buildings that will create a certain energy when you go in. Everybody has a gift, but we can't spend the entire time, trying to fix something that doesn't work. We have to actually build. The caterpillars are trying to fix its old life that's dying. Oh, I'm melting. Let me fix it. No, something new is born. You see, and that's what we're inviting ourselves to do with our spiritual practices on a regular basis. There's something new about me that's trying to be born. What is it? What is it? And your future self will begin to speak to you and pull you. And that pull and what you do, the breadcrumbs along the way, will be a dimension of your spiritual practice. And when you birth the next iteration of yourself, it's always called the homecoming. You're coming home to yourself. You knew it all along, but now you've embodied it, you see. The person I remember years ago, pre-Agape, I was sitting at the Asilomar conference ground at a conference. And I remember hearing this man speak. I don't remember the man's name. But he was speaking about unconditional love. And he was speaking about not taking things personal. It was advanced for that time. And I remember somebody was booing him because they didn't like what he was saying. And he told them in no uncertain words to shut up. He was speaking, but he went on to speak, and he was carrying this high frequency of love. And I remember saying, I want to be like that. And about 6 months ago, I said to myself, wow, I have become the man I've always wanted to be. It's not an end game. I mean, I'm still a lifelong learner. There's no more iterations of myself, but I had to stop and acknowledge I have become the person I've wanted to be in terms of my priorities, my practices, my love, my service, what I'm about, it's like, I like this guy, Michael. He's really a cool dude. You know what I mean? He doesn't have any hidden agendas. He's for people. I like him. And I want people to be able to have that feeling about themselves, to be able to say, not that we're perfect, not that we're not going to make mistakes. I'm not saying that, but that I like what I'm becoming, you see. And when you look at the haters in the world, they do not like themselves. A racist does not like himself or herself. A person that's trading in the superiority of racist frequency, they don't like themselves. There's a blind spot there. There's some hurt. There's some wound, you see. People that hate anybody don't like themselves, don't love themselves, you see. And so there's something trying to be born, and we want to be about it. Description, articulation, and then becoming it, you see.
And so it is. So I wanted to ask you this, I didn't know that I was going to be asking you this today, but did you start out, I know a little bit about your backstory, but I don't know this answer. Did you want a spiritual center? Did you want to have a community as you do now when you first started your journey?
I think intuitively I knew it was in me, but I resisted it vehemently. And in the beginning, I had my first spiritual awakening in 1974, 75. I was a senior at USC, psychobiology major. And my life totally changed. I had to go on a hunt to discover what had happened to me. But it was all internal and it was personal. My relationship with the presence came through a lot of people that were dead, people that had passed on. They were my teachers, and I even had the ability to communicate with them. There was a period of time where people would come to me for healings. I had no degrees, had none of that at this time. Spiritual degrees I'm talking about. And then I became a spiritual therapist. I was seeing 6 to 8 people every single day, 6 days a week. A lot of miracles happened as I was working with people. And then I got a job at the Ministry of Prayer for the United Church of Religious Science. I was the trainer the director of training. And I started going through the School of Ministry. Now, I wasn't going through the School of Ministry to be a minister. I just like lifelong learning. So I was picking and choosing these classes that I believed that the teacher really had embodied something. They weren't just like a professor giving academic stuff, but they really had a sense of the presence. I took classes for 5 years. It took me 5 years to get out of a 3-year program because I had no interest in graduating. One day, the assistant dean came to me and said, Michael, when are you going to graduate? And I said, I'm not even thinking about graduation. I just like my life. I was doing seminars. I was speaking. I was running the prayer ministry. I had clients, and I was going to school. And she said these fateful words, you do realize that the classes are free to alumni. If you graduate, your classes are free forever. I said, what? So I took a full load, graduated, and then this pressure was on me. And I know it was from the ancestral realm and from my guides that were inviting me to start a community. I did not want to start a community. I loved my life. I love my weekends off. And it got overwhelming. And I heard a message that said, if you do not do this work, we have no reason for you to be on the planet anymore. And it was very real. And some things happened to show me how real it was. And I remember going to Mexico for a few-day vacation. And I was sitting looking at the stars, and I saw a vision of agape. I saw it. And when I came home, I went to the director of the prayer ministry and I said, I've had a vision. I'm going to start a community. And she said, where? I said, I've been guided to start a community in Santa Monica. And she said, what about your people? And I said, short people? And then she got embarrassed, and she said, oh, I didn't mean anything by that. And I said, don't worry about it. I said, I've been guided to start in Santa Monica. And then I talked to another minister, and he said, 3 or 4 people have tried to start communities in Santa Monica and failed. And you as a Black man, you're not going to have a chance to start a community in a beach community as a Black man. And I said, I've been guided to do this. I'm going to do it. It became very successful, obviously. The building was sold, so we had to move to ultimately Culver City, and now we're in Beverly Hills. But all along the way, I had to give up my resistance to it. Now, I'll tell you what happened. I used to have a crook in my neck where I couldn't turn my head fully to my right. I could do left, and I would go to the chiropractor on a regular basis, and he would put it back in place. And for a few days, I had full rotation, and then it would creep back in again. The moment I said yes to the vision, my neck popped into place and stayed in place. This was an indication of stuckness. I was refusing to move forward.
You're refusing to see. You didn't want to see.
I didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
And as soon as I said yes, the energy flowed. I haven't had any issues with that. And that was 30 something years ago, 35 years ago. And so when you ask me, I think inside I wanted to, consciously I was fighting it. Finally, there became a meeting between my conscious mind and my subconscious mind. And now I love it. I mean, I love my life. I love the opportunity to teach and to help people grow and to heal and to travel around the world. And I love it. And I love it so much that it's probably a detriment to certain things because I haven't had a vacation in years, a real one. But I'm going to. And that's what I'm going to begin to embrace that and take some time off. But I love the community. I love, I love people. And so I love God. So it's a good mix. It's a good mix.
Yes, it is a good mix. Well, we have a lot of, I know Julie's coming on the show, Moret, Mary Morrissey's coming on the show. I know you have a lot of backup in case you want to take a vacation of people that could step in for you temporarily.
Julie stepped in for me 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I've seen her many times. So, but in terms
great.
of, you're taken care of, you're supported, you have all the great people. And I asked that because when I was in Kauai in 2008 and I had a flower essence reading with a healer, if you will, of sorts. And he did 2 of them. And the first one he did was sort of what he considers his traditional flower essence reading. It's kind of light and fluffy. He got to mine and he said, whoa, he said, and I have it recorded. He said, you just want to keep growing, like unlayering like that of a spiritual leader. Mm-hmm. And I thought of you back then. And I thought, I don't want to be Michael right now. And every time I come to a guy, I'm like, is it time for me to have a church? I'm like, nope, it's not time for me to have a church. I have my podcast. We're good. But
that's a community.
Oh, absolutely. I have a great community. I have an amazing community. I have a community that people want to have who are podcasters because they're super dedicated. And it is kind of like church. My most popular show is called Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. So it is very spiritual based. It is very empowering. And I'm starting my own certification. It's called the Empowerment Strategist. So when you talk, all the things we're talking about are in alignment also. And but I just keep checking in because that message in the back of my head of like, will I ever want a church or a live? And I'm like, nope, we're just gonna let Michael do that, and I'll be doing all the other things.
Yeah, you're doing it already. Everybody doesn't have to do it the same way. There are people that are be on television. There are people that are doing podcasts. People are doing IG lives, Zooms. I don't even have a community anymore because of COVID. I mean, I'm in-person community.
Right.
Everything is Zoom or podcast or Instagram. And I've learned to feel the intimacy of that in a very powerful way. When I'm speaking on Sundays, I look into the camera and I actually become aware of the thousands of people tuning in. It's almost as if they're in the room. I become sensitive to that. So even though they're not in the room physically, technology and prayer has allowed us to dwarf time and space. Time and space doesn't exist anymore. Everything is right now, you see. So it's a community. You have a community. So you might as well just accept it.
Yeah, no, no, I do. I love you guys. I love you guys. Don't go away. But let's talk about, because let's take this to the next level of growth and expansion for people that are listening who are going to start attending Agape Live on Sundays or go back and watch them. You have a retreat coming up, and I know you do it every year for like New Year's. You do now you're doing another one, which is at retreats.michaelbeckwith.com. Let's talk about this upcoming retreat that you have, how it's structured, what people can get out of it. And of course, you can sign up at retreat.michaelbeckwith.com.
Yes. It's and this one is October 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. It's 3 days, 2 hours in the morning. There's a emphasis on the practice of meditation, and I guide everyone through it. And then there'll be 2 hours, depending on what time zone you're in, late afternoon, early evening. And I'm going to do practices, and I'm also going to field questions. For people, they'll be obviously emailing me, and I'll be handling those questions. So it'll be live practice and Q&A. I have Gowapale, a great singer, Lyra out of South Africa, who's providing music for the days. So it's going to have that aspect to it as well. But people have been asking for me to do this because, as you say, normally I would do a spring retreat, then I would do a New Year's retreat, but COVID has kept us from meeting. So this is our first venture into doing a virtual meditation retreat, which people are already signing up for. So I think it's going to be very, very, very good. I'm going to teach some different aspects of meditation, a different kind of breath work, different kind of consciousness expanding technology. And obviously when I'm live, I will be in the moment with whatever needs to emerge in that moment for the teaching. So it's very powerful.
So check out retreats.michaelbeckwith.com. Again, if you're listening to this on the podcast, it will be in the show notes. And if you're catching this after it's happened, I'm sure there will be another one. And again, you can go to michaelbeckwith.com to see what's going on and when he's going to do the next one. And again, agapelive.com to come to service on Sunday or watch some past ones. And what other things, in case someone's listening to this after October 24th, it will be up soon. But again, podcasts, the great thing about podcasts is they're evergreen. So someone can get it a year from now and go, gosh, I really want that. What else? Do we have anything else to offer them right now that's ongoing?
Well, I do an ongoing Instagram Live conversation with somebody every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. We have morning prayers every day at 8 a.m. Pacific time on Agape's Facebook page, 12 noon facilitated meditation every day on my Facebook page and Agape's Facebook page. We have a Friday night community meeting where I bring in a spiritual teacher at 5:30 Pacific time to have a dialogue about a particular spiritual practice or subject. And people obviously write in and talk. I have that. We have full-on youth programs that people can tune into. We have full-on counseling programs and prayer programs that people can tune in. Our university is teaching classes. I'm in the middle of teaching a class right now. People all over the world are tuning into it. We have a class coming up called Spiritual Liberation, taught by Kim Terranova. That's going to be very powerful. We have a class called From Race to Grace, about the issues we've talked about today, how to move from race to a level of grace. It's going to deal with healing the wounds of racism and going beyond that. So our university, if they go to our website, they can look up university and see all the classes that are offered. And they're accredited to become a spiritual therapist or a minister, but you don't have to take it for that. You can just take it for your own growth, unless you feel you're called to do that kind of work. So yeah, it's a full-on operation that's pretty much now virtual. The things we used to do in person are pretty much done virtually now. And even when we go back to meeting, the virtual part will still stay. So we'll have both aspects going.
Which is a blessing for everyone, actually, too, because it really allows you to remember those that live close by that can go and sometimes don't go. You always have access to it. And for those that think, well, I don't live there, I can't go. Okay, you can't go anywhere. So you can choose where you want to go at any time and use at least technology for this wonderful opportunity to connect in a different way, regardless, again, of race, religion, sexual orientation, belief system. It's a community that's based in love. That's what agape means, right?
Agape means love. It's the love of God operating in the human heart, as described by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it's a transdenominational. It's embracing the spiritual principles, laws, not opinions, but spiritual principles and laws that you can use for your own unfoldment and for the betterment of the world. Yeah.
I can't help but keep calling you Reverend Michael because I come to your church and your community. So,
listen,
Michael,
I am Reverend Michael, and I am Michael Beckwith, and I am Michael Bernard Beckwith, the founder of Agape. I don't have any problem with Reverend. I mean, people call me wherever I'm at. You know, listen. I've been knighted, so I'm a sir. I've had a chieftain given to me in Africa, so I'm chief. You know, I've got 2 doctorates, so I'm doctor. I got a reverend, so I'm reverend. So I am Sir Reverend Dr. Chief Michael B. Beckwith. So
on that note, I can't tell you how this is amazing. I really appreciate everything that you're doing in the world. I appreciate you coming on today and sharing with my community. I appreciate your presence in the world, your leadership in the world, your light in the world, and that our paths have crossed in more than one way. And anytime you have anything that you would like to promote, to shout to the world, a new insight, you are always welcome back. I have many people back here because we start a relationship, and that relationship continues to grow and build. The more that people know, like, and trust you and me, they take action to move towards being a part of your community. As I'm really, everybody who's listening to this right now, if you're a part of my community and you have been for a while, please go to agapelive.com. Please come to a Sunday service. Please check out retreats.michaelbeckwith.com. Michael's got a lot of stuff, obviously, as he just said. So feel into what your next right step is. But here's the advice: take a right next step. Yeah. Follow that right next step. Don't just listen. Do something with that impulse that you got somewhere in today's show and follow it through. Take action so that you can continue to evolve, expand, and grow and shine your light into the world, because we really need it right now. And we want to make that change. So, Michael, thank you for coming on the show.
Absolutely. I would just add, there's only really one community in many locations. So we're all a part of this same great, beautiful community. We're in different locations, different nuances, but it's really one community that's about the betterment of and unfoldment of our soul and the betterment of the world in which we're living. So thank you for the great work you're doing.
Thank you. And so it is.
Amen. Amen. That's what this says. And so it is.
Yay!
They can get this in our bookstore, by the way.
I know. We have a couple of shirts, but we don't have the new ones. That's new since the last time I've been to the bookstore. So I can't wait till Agape to open up again. I mean, I know we're doing it online, and that's awesome and amazing, but I live here, so I can come there.
Right.
Thank you so much for being here.
My joy. Thank you.